deeper to the heart of love, deeper deeper to the heart of love, deeper letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, rising, rising in love, deeper to the heart of love, deeper deeper to the heart of love, deeper letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, rising, rising in love, rising in love, rising in love, deeper to the heart of love, deeper deeper to the heart of love, deeper letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, letting go into the mystery, rising, rising in love, rising in love, rising in love, deeper letting go.
Thank you, Deva and Myron, for that beautiful music. Good evening. I'm Reverend Bill Salisbury, and I'd like to welcome you to the Wednesday night gathering, to the Practicing the Presence. I'm standing in for Reverend Laurie McMacken tonight. As you know, this is our candlelight service, so At this time, I would like to invite you to come forward and light a candle. And when you do, I invite you to light it with an intention in mind to put the light of love on somebody or something that you're holding in mind for this service.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and I see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I've lost my way, I just go inside and quiet my mind. I can hear the Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. Sing that with me. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. One more time. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love.
Oh, and thank you for that beautiful music. And just a reminder that this is the part of our service tonight where we enter into the silence. We begin the service with several minutes of meditative silence. And just know, too, that as we do, we have two practitioners here from Seaside. We have Trudy Seifke sharing the platform with me, who will be doing an invocation and a reading following the silence, and Deb Sadler in the back holding the light for us. And just know that both of these fine practitioners are available for prayer after the service. So right now I invite you just to settle into the silence.
invite you to turn within. Turning within to the deep and beautiful place of your inner world. That place right back behind the eyelids. And recognize such a beautiful evening. And I recognize that indeed there is just one mind, one source of all. And we may call it God or Abba. We may call it Buddha, Confucius. We call it whatever you like. It is but the source of all being. And I am knowing for each individual here that something has nudged you to come here tonight. Something has lovingly nudged you or pushed you even in a way that you have come here in order to be with one another of like mind, like heart. And so we open this evening just knowing that God is everywhere present. In my being, in my thoughts, in my very way of how I am in the world. And I know for each one here that a gift is about to be given, and we simply ask for you to relax and receive. And just know that all is well. All is well. And so for this, I'm so thankful, grateful for the idea that we may pray together. And I simply now just let it be. And I say, and so it is. Well, good evening, everyone. We are in for a treat tonight with Reverend Bill Salisbury. He's bringing to us a talk about Love Lights the Way. That's going to be good. So the reading I chose has something to do with love, and it's something I wrote a while ago, but it still applies to the universal truths that we know. So it still applies today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And it's entitled, For the Love of God. How did we forget that we are special or have a purpose or belong? Who we are and how we show up? How often do we forget that we belong? It is no mistake that we belong. And how often do we remind ourselves of that? How did we forget that we are here, right here in this present time? And ultimately, we have stories. How often do we remind ourselves of that? The fact that we even exist is a miracle. And what's so interesting to me, that on a deep level, that God so loved us that he created us. The creative power that created us seeks to express more fully. But we keep running into our creative box of what went wrong, the accident, the stuff, and make excuses for our existence. One reason this has been so present for me is I started to think here in California how beautiful it must have been before we got here. But actually, before we got here in the San Diego region, there wasn't anything but desert. So our participation here has brought this life, this greenery, vegetation, crops, rain, some rain. And at any rate, even though we're in a drought, I trust there are creative solutions for this. And we forget this. We get into the story. Our story is very deep in us. Each one of us has done some crazy stuff in our life. And you're still here. You are still here. Now, how does that feel? So for the love of God, can we stop explaining why life looks the way it does and begin to enjoy the gift we've been given? And one more note. the purpose of our life. The purpose thing is really tricky. I don't think we need to know the purpose as much as we need to know that it's there. We don't need to explain it to somebody else. We feel we need to know and to figure it out. What is our purpose? And that we might be missing it. What is it? Well, probably it's something we can't even imagine. You see, I know your God and my God has something more imaginative, more large, more grand. In the ground, it's grand, than we could ever imagine. And this is where life has created form. And this is your life and your open place to express it. And our purpose, well, it is unique to us. And so, for the love of God, the idea that we start to remember and begin to live our life with a sense of curiosity and anticipation for the love of God. And with that, I hand it off to Reverend.
Oh, thank you, Trudy, for that beautiful opening prayer and that delightful reading. Just out of my way. So, every sage, every wisdom teacher, every religious leader, from all callings, from all teachings, from all philosophies, all denominations, from all ages, have told us the same thing. There is one. There's one reality, reality with a capital R. There's one and there's only one. This is a unity within which we all live and move and have our being, and we are all individualized expressions of this grand divine mind within which we live. So there is only one. Call it what you will. We call it nature, call it life, call it divine mind, call it mother, call it father, call it spirit, call it God. Whatever we call it, there's just one. And that one is everything. So God is everything. Another thing they tell us, these sages, is that God is love. So if God is everything and God is love, then love is everything. Hence my talk title, Love Lights the Way, because love is the only thing we have to light our way. We use it to light our way. We use it to light the ways of others. We use it to lift the consciousness of the species. We use it to increase our spiritual awareness, to make every day a better day, and to make every day the best day it can possibly be. Now, it's true that we are only love, and yet sometimes, I kind of look around and I see things that don't appear to be just love, and I wonder, how can this be? But a little bit of thought, and I figured out how it can be, because it works kind of like this. We're all born as babies. I was a baby, you were a baby, everybody was a baby. Have you ever seen a baby that you didn't just love? Have you ever seen a baby that wasn't just love? 100% pure, unadulterated love. Babies are born of love, in love, as love. Yet somewhere along the way, we have a tendency for that to change. And that's because we get conditioned. So shortly after we're born this little bubble of love that everybody's fawning over, we start discovering, and at a pretty young age, that all the things we do and say and feel, the activities we do, that we make, coming from the love that we are, sometimes end us up a little bit hurt, emotionally, psychologically, physically even maybe. And we tend then, in self-defense, to protect ourselves against that somehow. And we do that by by mediating the love that we are and that normally exuded from us. So we build these little blocks and these little walls, and we build them around our heart, and sometimes they get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and pretty soon it seems like they kind of block out the sun that is our basic love consciousness. So we hide that love that we are. We mask it, we cloud it, we shroud it, we put our little bushel basket over it. And eventually, that works for us until we get to the point where we realize that, gee, somewhere I'm missing out here. I've left the love behind. Love is supposed to light my way. How can I light my way if I keep it stifled and I keep the mask on, the facade? And then we eventually let it go, and that's with our spiritual growth. We know that can happen. So wouldn't it be great if we just left out the middleman? What about if we just started out as love and then ended up as love, because we're going to anyway? Maybe we could just process that a little bit quicker. There's a story of a little boy who's got a sister a little bit older than him, and he asked her one day, because he's wondering, he says, can anybody ever really see God? And she said, don't be silly. God lives a gazillion miles away up in the sky. Nobody can ever see God. So he thinks about this for a little while, and he thought, well, maybe I'll get a second opinion. So he goes into the kitchen where Mom is fixing dinner, and he says, Mom, can anybody ever really see God? And she says, no, honey, nobody can ever see God. Go out and play. So that pretty much does it for him. He's had his opinion, and he's had it verified, so he lets that go until sometime later, Grandpa, on a weekend, comes and picks him up and takes him to do a little fishing, a little one-on-one time. And they fish into the afternoon, and well, the sun is going down, and this glorious sunset starts to take shape. And Grandpa just stops fishing, and he's just looking at this sunset, and this look of peace and contentment just comes over his face, and the little boy looks up at him. He catches him just in that light, and he says, wow, he says, Grandpa, I wasn't going to ask anybody else this, but maybe I should ask you. Can anybody ever really see God? And Grandpa just sits there for a second silent. Then he turns and he says, son, it's getting to be the case that that's all I can see. So we begin with that beauty in our soul, and we end with it, and it never goes away. It's always still there. We just cover it up. It acts like a mask. In fact, it was James Baldwin who said that love is what allows us to remove those masks that we put on that we're so fearful that we cannot live without. Yet we know deep within us that we can't continue to live under those masks. So when we get to that point, we put the mask on in self-defense, and when then we come full circle, we take the mask off because we know that that's just not effective. And that can be done in any set of circumstances. Everybody does it. Everybody has that capacity. Everybody is pure, sweet, 100% love at their essence. One of the brightest luminaries, one of the most spiritual people, incredibly so, because of her youthfulness, her young, tender age as a teenage girl. During World War II, and she and her family didn't survive after living for a couple of years in an attic, hiding from the Nazis. They eventually got turned in and were dragged off to the Auschwitz death camp. But left behind was her diary. And we're all familiar with it, the Diary of Anne Frank. And she had so many wonderful things in there, especially for a child of her age. But the three I want to talk about are these. One of the things she said was, I have so much to give. And I want to give it all. I don't want to live my life in vain like so many people do and never share my love. Because in fact, I want to go on living even after my death. And that was almost a premonition. But can you imagine living in those horrid circumstances, and what she thinks about is love. And the love that she still has, and love that we all have, and how we have to let it light the way for ourselves and for others. And another thing she said was, you know what? There's good news. There's good news within every person. And that good news is, you don't have any idea of your capacity for joy and your capacity for love, the potential that you have to love and change the world. Again, under those circumstances and conditions, I think that's extraordinary. And then the third thing was, she did mention that about the candle, that both at the same time defies and defines darkness. Because it defies darkness in that as soon as you light the candle, what happens? The darkness dissipates, and it defines it because this darkness is going back to the nothingness that it is. There's no such thing, really, there's no entity, darkness, in and of itself. Darkness is just the absence of light, and when we allow our light to be hidden, then darkness appears to come in. But as soon as we light that light, there goes the darkness. There's a guy right now on our scene, James Twyman. Probably some of you know him. He bills himself as the peace troubadour. And I think that's fine, because anybody who wants to say, I'm the peace troubadour and run around creating peace all around the globe, I think is a perfect example of the love that we are and that we should be talking about. But he put together a thing here a couple of weeks ago, and some of us here were a part of it, where he asked for people to all stop for 10 minutes at the same time. So in all different time zones, it was a different time for everybody. Some people stopped at 4 o'clock in the morning, some people at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, some people at midnight. But everybody stopped for 10 minutes and did a silent prayer while he and a whole group of religious representatives from all different walks of religion and philosophies and teachings gathered on a hill overlooking a small village in Syria. And he wanted us to pray for peace for Syria. Now, Syria's been at war for decades, for years. I mean, they're just fighting. But for 10 minutes on that day, there were over 1 million people who stopped and said a silent prayer for peace. And guess what? Just a few days later, not weeks or months or years, a few days later, within that same week, the warring factions in Syria signed a peace treaty. Coincidence? I don't think so. I think that's love lighting the way. And right now, he's on a mission that's coming up either in March or April. He already has over 10 million people committed to doing this. And he's going to a large peace gathering they're having in New Delhi in India, because he says if Earth had a heart, that heart would be India. And he's putting together a prayer thing for that for 10 minutes in our own time zone. And he has over 10 million people committed to doing that. And I dare say that if you hurry, we could probably run down to NASA and get jobs as astronauts and get up on the space station. Because I think from up there, we could look down on this planet at that time and see visibly, palpably, a light shining around the earth. 10 million plus people around the globe, that's going to give off a glow. If the light from one of our candles dispels the darkness, what would the light from 10 million or 15 million or more do? It'd be encouraging, would it not? So we need that. We need the love of each other. We need the love of ourselves. In fact, Jesus, the master teacher, said, really? We only need to love 3 things. How hard can this be? We only need to love God, love others, and love ourselves. That's all. Love God with all your heart and soul, he says. Love your brother as yourself. And he did add that we do to the least of our brethren, we do to him, which means, by extension, that we do to ourselves, that we do to God. And then we need to love ourselves. And the Buddha said, if you travel the world over looking for somebody who is more deserving of your love and your respect than you spend the rest of your life searching, because there is no such thing. There's nobody more deserving of your love than you are. But it's an equal. Here's a note. We are all equal in our divinity. A little spiritual math for us. We are all equal. So if you're looking at somebody who dresses better than you, or somebody who dresses worse than you, somebody who drives a newer car, or somebody who doesn't even have a car, or somebody who's got a better job, or somebody who's got a lesser job, it doesn't make any difference, because at our essence we are all the same. We are all divine. We are all expressions of God. So we are all equal in our divinity. And where we find God is everywhere. When we look at another human being, we are looking at the face of God. So there's a story about a little boy, another little boy. Little boys are popular tonight. And he decides that he wants to meet God. He doesn't know where he's going to go to find God, but he knows it's a long way, so he better pack something to eat. So he goes into the kitchen, he gets out his little lunchbox, and he unzips it and he opens it up, and he fills it full of Twinkies and, juice boxes. And he closes it up and he just hikes out the door. He gets about 3 blocks, and there's a park, and there's an old woman sitting on a bench in the park looking at the pigeons. And he says, well, that looks interesting, and I've gone quite a way. I could use a rest. So he goes over and he sits on the other end of the bench. He doesn't say anything to the woman. He just sits there on the bench, and he's watching the pigeons too. Well, pretty soon he gets hungry, so he opens up his lunchbox and he pulls out a Twinkie, and he's about to bite into it when he remembers his manners. It's not polite to eat in front of someone else without offering them something. So he offers a Twinkie to the old woman, and she smiles and takes it, and he gets out another one, and he eats his Twinkie, she eats her Twinkie, and she gives him a big smile. Then he gets out a juice box, and he hands her one, and he has one, and she drinks it, and she gives him another big smile. And then pretty soon, that's the way they pass the afternoon. And all at once, his lunchbox is empty. There's no more Twinkies. There's no more juice boxes. And it's getting a little late, and he knows that he needs to get home. So he packs up his stuff, and he jumps off the bench, and he takes a few steps away, and then all at once he turns around, and he runs back, and he just runs up and hugs this old woman. And she hugs him back, and then they break apart, and she just gives him this big, giant smile. And he goes home. He walks in the door, and his mom is there, and she looks at him, and she says, wow, what made you so happy? What have you been doing today? He said, I had lunch with God in the park. And before she could say anything, he says, and she had the prettiest smile. Meanwhile, on the other side of the park, the old woman has gone to her son's house because she lives with her son and daughter-in-law right there. And she walks in the door, and the son looks at her, and he says, Mother, wow, you just have an absolute glow. What have you been doing all afternoon? She says, I ate Twinkies in the park with God. And before he could say anything, she said, he's much younger than I expected. That's where we find love, and that's where we find light. And that's how we love each other and one another. And it doesn't have to be just people, does it? All things are in and of the divine. Every person, every being, every animal, every entity, every circumstance, every situation. I've got one more little short story. It's about two horses out in the field. And as you're standing on the road looking at the two horses, they look very much the same. But if you get a little closer, you discover that they are different because one of them is blind. And when it became blind, the guy who owned it didn't want to just put the horse down because he just loved this horse. He said, well, he just built a nice safe place for it, a nice stable in the barn. And the other horse, and these two horses had been friends since they were little foals, he puts around his neck a little copper bell so that this bell rings when the horse moves his neck. And you could watch these two horses, and as they're grazing, the one would look up every once in a while and ring that bell, and the blind one then knew where to go because he could follow the sound and go for good grazing. And at the end of the day, they would head back for the barn, and every once in a while the first horse would stop and turn his head and ring the bell, and the other one knew to go in there. That's another form of love lighting the way, is it not? One, because the farmer kept the horse because he loved it, and the love between the other two horses. I mean, even putting that bell on the second horse, he didn't have to do what he did. He just did it because that's what love does. And as we go through life, I think the lesson there is this. Sometimes we're the blind horse, and we need that guidance. And other times, we're the one doing the guiding because it's our love that gets to light the way for somebody else. Either way, we come out a winner. So what do we do about this conditioning? What do we do about what keeps us from being that full-on love influence that we should do? Well, we have to mitigate against the things that caused us to mitigate against the love in the first place. And there's any number of ways of doing that. Spiritual practices, leading with love, leading with the heart. Remember how we used to do when we were young children. Marianne Williamson, in her book Return to Love, asked the question, remember, who are you to be so great? Who are you to be a love leader sort of thing? And then she said, well, look, really? Who are you not to be? We don't serve anybody by hiding our light under a bushel. We don't serve anybody by putting on the false mask. We don't serve anybody by not living up to our true love potential. And this is not a zero-sum game. The only love we get to keep is the love that we give away. This is like the law of circulation. When we have a block and we're not allowing that love to flow through us, there's no more that can come in. Comes in, it hits that block, we lose. We have to open up those blocks so that we can keep that flow of circulation, that flow of love going. And that's a full-time job. Love is a noun, love is a verb, love is an action, love is a feeling, love is a sense. And love is a choice. We get to choose love. Every second, every decision, every day of our lives, we get to choose, is what I'm doing coming from love? And if so, it's indeed lighting the way. If it's not coming from love, it has to be coming from fear, because those are the only two places we can come from, love or fear. And I just think it's not easy, but it's simple, isn't it? It's not easy, but it is simple. When faced, and Ernest Holmes says, our teaching, science of mind, and of course, this could be said in any teaching, our teaching isn't worth anything if you can't depend on it, fall back on it, use it in times of need. It's really easy to love somebody when they're doing what you want them to do. Isn't it? That's easy. But this teaching is mostly of value in those times when things are not manifesting exactly the way we hope that they would. That's when we need to dig deep and to know that our spiritual practices are such that they're so embedded in us that we pull out that love, we light that way, and we lift ourselves, and we lift others, and we lift humanity at the same time. So what I'd love to do is to invite you this week, just this week, approach every condition, every circumstance, every situation with love. And to choose answering with love any question, any concern, every situation that comes your way. Because I'm certain that if you do that, and if I do that, and if we could just get everybody to do that, the way for all of us would be lit into that greater, grander, most glorious spiritual realm, that awakening of our spirituality that is inevitable. We just will slow it down a little less. We let it move, slow down anyway. We just keep it from moving faster so that we get into that position where it's just second nature. It becomes not just our spiritual practice when we're practicing, it becomes our spiritual practice when we're living. When we're living, when we're lighting, when we're loving the way. Thank you. And, can we just take a minute and just go into a brief prayer here? Just knowing that each of us is a manifestation of the divine, that each of us is an individualized expression of the one, of Spirit of God. And as such, each of us brings to this thing called life something nobody else can bring. Each of us brings to this thing called life only that which we are capable of bringing. And each thing that every person brings is an integral part of the puzzle. If one of us was missing, God itself would be incomplete. And we know that's not possible. Because God is all, God is everything, God is one, and God is it. We are each made of the very substance of the divine, and we're powered by the energy of the divine. It's the same thing coursing through our veins and driving us as the substance and the energy that holds together the galaxies, the universe, and those billions of stars that you see when you look out into the sky. That's some awesome power. That power is ours. That power is in each one of us. If we just unleash it, release it, allow it to do its thing. If we just consciously choose love in every situation, and we know that when we let our love light the way, it lights the way for us, It lights the way for our brothers. It lights the way truly for the divine. Because in that fashion, we are loving ourselves, we are loving each other, and we are loving God. And really, there's nothing more we need to do. We are here in this life and in this hour, in this sanctuary, in this sacred spot that is Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. We are here on purpose. We are here by divine appointment. We are here to experience, to investigate, to delve deep into that power that we have, into that love that is within us, that is in fact our entire makeup, our entire essence. We are here to bring that forth, to allow that light to go ahead of us everywhere and light the way for us. With that in mind, with a heart full of gratitude, I just give great thanks that this is the case. I give great thanks that it's the case, and I give great thanks that we know, each one of us, that this is the case, and this is our destiny, and this is what we are here for. Love, light, God. Knowing this is so, I just release this word into that law, that immutable law that knows only to say yes, that knows only to help us direct the light of our love. I release this word, I let it go. And please join me in saying, and so it is.
Up high in the land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Are blue and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. If happy little bluebirds fly above the rainbow white, oh, why can't I?
Ooh. Deva, Vani, and Myron Stam, ladies and gentlemen. Could it possibly get any better than that? So, this is the time of our service where we have an opportunity to give back to that spiritual community that serves us so well. It's a time where we can pour forth that financial energy that we feel fit to bring to this spiritual community, knowing that as we do, it supports these services, it supports the services out in the world that Seaside Center tithes to and supports. So it supports us, it supports everybody. So I just invite you to take whatever offering you have for this center, hold it close to your heart, and just know that as you give it with love, it is received with love, and it goes out to do the work of love in the world. Once again, lighting the way for all the programs that Seaside is invested in, both here in our own spiritual community and out in the community at large. Do we have the affirmation? Yes, and just join me in our affirmative giving affirmation, please. Freely I give, freely I receive. I am immersed in the universal flow, knowing my gift does good work in the world and returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. Ginny and Dennis Campbell, please go forth as our ushers pass amongst you.
The song
So this is that time of our service where Reverend Laurie would generally go into the circle of love prayer, and I see no reason to not do that. So if you have somebody in mind that could use a healing to bring it into this circle of love prayer, just raise your hand, and like Reverend Laurie does, I'll point at you, we'll ring the bell, and we'll get everybody included. So let's just know that those we have included and those we have not included, and anybody in need of a healing prayer, just know that in the divine mind, in this wonderful sea of love in which we are born, within which we have our entire existence and eventually return to, that this circle of love within me is complete, and the circle of love within each other here is complete, and the circle of love in each of those named is complete. The circle comprehends all, it includes all, it binds all together with cords of everlasting unity. I cannot wander from its presence, nor can I depart from its care, nor can anybody. This love is complete. It is with us all the time. It is part and parcel of who we are. It is our essence. It is our spiritual DNA. And within this, just know that releasing this love and shining the light on everything that could possibly need healing, that healing is complete. That each of us is whole, complete, and perfect in the divine mind. That there is no untoward happening in God. There is nothing but perfection. There is one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. That life is the life of everybody right here, right now. And knowing that to be the case, I just give great thanks for this healing. I give great thanks. I release it into the universe, knowing that it is already done. And so it is. Do you have a song? Oh, so I have one announcement. Ginny Campbell is having a spiritual mind treatment workshop this Saturday right here in the sanctuary from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. It's $20 unless you're enrolled in Dr. Christian's Foundations class, and then it's part of that class. So meanwhile, I'd like to thank Deva and Myron for the wonderful music. Thank our two practitioners, Deb Sadler and Trudy Seifka. And remember, they're available in the prayer room right here in the foyer for prayer after the service. Great thanks to Jenny and Dennis Mills for all that they do. Jenny, our service coordinator. Melanie Bennett and Gregory Neville, thank you so much, because without you two, this service couldn't even go on at all. And thank each one of you for being here. And from my heart to yours, namaste. Please join me in our closing song. Or join them in our closing song.
Love is a never-ending circle. It goes on and on, joining us all as one in a common bond. Love is a never-ending circle, and there's room inside enough for all of us.
All right, please join us for refreshments out in the social hall.